protein timing is post-exercise, how much protein should you actually have, right? And so that's a very interesting topic. So how much protein should you have like post-exercise? Well, it depends. One thing I know is this, that if you take a person who's kind of average body weight, like say like me, I'm 100 and maybe 83 pounds, okay? And so if you take a guy like me, if I'm at rest and you gave me a scoop of whey is around 23 grams of protein in general, that would maximize protein synthesis in my muscles if I hadn't trained today, okay? But the thing is, there's research that was shown that like, in other words, if I go past 20 grams, protein synthesis might not increase that much after 23 grams, all right? That's actually good, Paul. If I go past 23 grams, protein synthesis might actually not increase that much. But I think it's better before. So, but if I actually after a workout had 40 grams of protein synthesis would actually be greater with the 40 grams, right? So I think that's one of the main points is that at rest, 20 grams might maximize protein synthesis, but post-exercise, 40 grams actually increases it more. So what this basically says is that one of the ways that we grow, one of the ways that we increase muscle mass is that our muscles are sensitized to be able to stimulate more protein synthesis at a higher threshold, okay? So again, if before it was only 20 grams, I can actually grow more with 40 after my workout compared to 20, okay? And that's one of the ways we grow. So you want to take advantage of that because that doesn't last forever. There's a limited period of time where protein synthesis is going to be maximized following a workout compared to at rest. So that limited time is what we call a window. And traditionally, if you look at like John Ivey in 1988, he coined what we call the window of opportunity. And John Ivey's kind of like the king of timing or the father of timing. Okay, so now basically, does timing actually matter? Now, there's not been a lot of studies on timing, okay? There hasn't, period. Particularly when you talk about timing of protein long term. There just has not been a lot of studies. There's really 3 studies that you can really talk about when you talk about timing. There's a study by Paul Cribb. There's a study by Hoffman's lab. And there's more recently a study by Schoenfeld, but I'm going to summarize those up for you. Basically, but what you're kind of looking at here is the best out of the most kind of in-depth study out of all of those was by Paul Cribb. And what Paul Cribb did was he gave protein either immediately before and after exercise, and he compared it to having it spread out further away from the exercise, which was like breakfast and dinner, morning and night, compared to having it immediately before and after exercise. Now, what he found with bodybuilders is that having the protein and creatine before and after exercise resulted in more muscle growth and greater fat loss than if you had it separate from your workout. Now, that again supports the concept of there being a clear window of opportunity around the workout. Now, one of the people who commented on a post said, what about the Hoffman study that contradicted that? Now, Hoffman's a great researcher, excellent researcher, but basically what their protein blend had things like collagen in it. Now, collagen is a very poor quality protein, and what you're looking at is basically, it doesn't matter when you time it for muscle, it's not going to do anything anyway. So that study you can't compare that study to like the Paul Cribb study. Now, if we then move forward to another study that was done, like another person referenced Schoenfeld. Schoenfeld compared protein either before or after exercise. He's having it around the workout. So either way, it's around the workout, which we would recommend. Okay? That's different from Paul Cribb, which is basically like either have protein around the workout or spread it out completely away from the workout. So there's a camp of people who kind of like, well, it doesn't matter, blah, 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 blah. But in actuality, it does matter. So the next question becomes like, how long does that window last? So that basically there's a study done by Tang, and it was done in 2008?
2008, yes.
So Tang did a study in 2008 where basically they gave people, they had them resistance train and look at, remember you have an increased sensitivity to protein, they look how long that lasts. When they were untrained, a couple days after training, like 30 hours after training, protein synthesis was still elevated compared to baseline. 30 hours after. So a lot of people will go, oh, that means that the window's real long time, so it doesn't matter. Well, if you took, they then trained those people for 8 weeks, and after 8 weeks, that window, basically they were back down to baseline on protein synthesis 16 hours later. So 16 hours later, they went up, and basically they were almost down to baseline 16 hours later. That means that was 8 weeks of training. Would you consider, and they called that trained, would you, honestly, you listening to this podcast, or you listen to this Muscle Ph.D. live, comment, like tell me, would you consider training for 8 weeks well trained? Like tell right now, like comment, go yes or no. Do you consider 8 weeks of training, never train in your life, and you start training for 8 weeks, do you consider that trained? Absolutely, no. Or tell me what you think. Do you think that's trained? Absolutely not. But this study called them trained. And that's the one thing I'm going to tell you about science, guys. It's very important about science. I'm glad you guys are jumping in and commenting here, because your voice needs to be heard. Like, scientists study things that don't relate to reality a lot of times. And that's why I want the 99. That's why I want you guys to be empowered. Because scientists oftentimes aren't studying reality. So, and like Jeff Winterton says it takes years. You're absolutely right. 8 weeks is not trained. So what happens if Jeff, I'm sure you've been training for years, what happens for a guy like Jeff who's been training for years, right? How long does protein synthesis last for you? It might be a matter of 2 hours. It might be a matter of 3 hours. That window is going to shorten more and more and more the well-trained you are, is the point. So for 8 weeks, it's 16 hours. What about if you've been training for years? So my point is, and there's more research on nitrogen balance showing that it's very important, protein synthesis. Very, very important. Protein synthesis is going to last. If you give someone who's not trained protein synthesis, if you spread it out, it doesn't matter. But if you're well trained, it does matter. Last thing I want to talk about is basically what type of protein should you have, right? There was a study, and again, it was done by Paul Cribb, good friend of mine from Down Under. And so Cribb basically did a study in bodybuilders where he gave whey protein after exercise versus casein protein after exercise in bodybuilders, and he found that whey stimulated a lot more muscle growth. In fact, they got, I think it was in 10 weeks, they got 5 kilograms increase in lean mass versus around 1.3 kilograms in lean mass if you gave them casein. So they gained like a lot more, like almost 3 times more lean mass with whey compared to casein. Now, let me say this. There is research out of Texas Medical Branch that shows that if you combine whey and casein, it's comparative to whey. In other words, it's probably about as good as whey. So it's okay if you have a blend, but you need to have fast digesting protein after your workout. If you're just having slow digesting protein after the workout, I'm going to say this: no bueno. That's not ideal. You need to have a fast digesting source after exercise. So let me go ahead and sum this up for you guys, and then shoot me your questions. And when you do shoot your questions, make them like relative to like post-workout or even protein or protein timing, anything that's kind of related, or timing of protein throughout the day. It's fine. So what I'm going to tell you, I'm going to sum this up. Number one is that after exercise, your response to protein elevates such that you can consume more protein after exercise and get a higher anabolic response than if you had not trained. That's one of the reasons. There is a window. Paul Cribb's lab found that having protein around the workout was more beneficial than if you waited. That window shortens with training experience. The more experience that you have, the shorter the window lasts. So if you've been training for a number of years, I do think it's pertinent that when you're done training, you should eat right away. And then finally, that a fast digesting protein is ideal after you work out. So with that said, I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in, and let's get to the questions that you have. Now it's all about you. What questions do you guys have?
What is considered the same sitting? For example, if I use 20 grams of whey immediately post-workout, then 30 minutes later consume another 20 grams, is that one sitting?
Probably that's close enough in time to where they'll kind of summate together. There's some data to support that. That's pretty much one sitting, but I would probably just have 30 or 40 grams in one sitting immediately after you worked out.
To pin one right here.
Oh.
So we're start pinning them.
Oh, great. Okay, this is Jacqueline Fit Model. Hey, Jacqueline. Jacqueline tunes in a lot. I really appreciate you, Jacqueline. Thank you. For this, there is no difference for men or women. Yeah, Jacqueline, it seems like men and women respond, as far as like that acute protein synthesis response, fairly similar. So yes, Jacqueline. I would say probably like for a guy my size, 183, 40 grams. Probably for you, 30 grams is going to be that equivalent. You know what I mean? Because I is way more.
If you work out at night and you immediately consume your post-workout shake with some post-workout carbs, but then you're done eating, is that detrimental?
No, there's research actually at Van Loon's lab that showed having protein pretty much before bed was good. Yeah. So I think even if you worked out at night, I think that's fun. That'll work out good. In which case, maybe a blend might be good for that time. Alan says, Alan BioFit, how often do the windows oscillate? Like every third hour, get 30 grams? Yeah, I would say, based on my brother's research, he showed that protein synthesis lasted about 3 hours, but he prevented it from going down by having a protein source at about 2 hours. So my suggestion is, have a bolus of protein or have a serving of protein like right after you work out, and yeah, eat a good meal probably 2 hours later.
If doing HIIT, should you include post-workout carbs?
It depends on your goals. If your goal, to be honest, most people who are watching this show are doing HIIT to get leaner, in which case I'd probably go low carb afterward. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because your goal is to stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis, and that might interfere with it. If you do go carbs, have something that's like lower glycemic. Robbie Guns goes, how are you, Jacob? Robbie, I couldn't be doing better. How are you, buddy? MZ Cuzqui goes, what about vegan protein? Okay, here's the thing. Vegan protein, it's leucine or branched-chain amino acids trigger muscle growth, okay? So basically, if you're looking at rest, if 20 grams of whey protein maximized protein synthesis, at rest, you probably need like 40 grams of a vegan source. So you need double the calories. That means post-exercise, you might need like 60 or 70 grams or 80 grams of a vegan protein. So my point is that most people aren't going to eat that much vegan. So now, is there a way around it? Yeah. If you had your vegan source of protein, it has the building blocks, but what you need to do is supplement with like a branched-chain amino acids. My brother Gabe Wilson actually found that if you take an inferior source of protein, like wheat protein, and you add it BCAAs, it was as anabolic as whey protein. So you might not have a lot of the other health benefits of whey, but the anabolism, if you add BCAAs, you could probably have 30 grams of vegan plus BCAAs and still maximize protein synthesis.
Is there a specific form of weight training that boosts protein synthesis better than others?
So that's from Anthony, a specific form of weight training that benefits people more than others. Anthony, the answer is novelty. So you need to have a variety of training stimuli and resistance training stimuli to keep you growing. So if you've done the same type, if you keep doing like heavy lifting over and over, you'll stop making gains. Okay?
Do this one first?
Outlaw Laboratory Rep says, what certifications do you have outside the textbook and case study? That's right. Okay, I know where Paul's headed with this. We're actually, that's coming up soon. So let me say this: when we launch the website, we will have some serious big news. about stuff that's going to just be mind-blowing. But one of those things is going to be possibly like potential certifications to where you guys, we're going to take all this knowledge of years and years of study and really bring it down so you could study it, at a rapid rate. CSCS is pretty good.
That one's kind of like.
Let me say, answer her.
It's pinned, yep.
Yeah. Abacur says, that's a cool name. It's A. Is it A Biker or is that your name?
Biker, yeah.
A Biker. A Biker. Okay. Okay. So I'm guessing you're a biker. So can I have a meal afterwards and then whey protein later in the evening? Is that still optimal? Again, I like faster digesting sources after you work out. I think a meal afterward is fine, but if it's like super high fat and slows digestion, probably not. So maybe it'd be better to reverse that order if you're really trying to make gains. But, the main important thing is definitely that you're eating.
Consistent theme I'm finding is people are starting to understand that whey does spike insulin. How much whey do you need to get a significant insulin spike?
So here's the thing. A lot of people are concerned with whey because they go, whey, insulin, therefore I stop fat metabolism, right? But whey also stimulates a hormone called glucagon, which counters a lot of the effects of insulin as far as fat metabolism. And in addition to that, whey protein activates internally in the muscle something that increases fat metabolism and that antagonizes insulin. It turns on a fuel gauge in the cell that actually turns on fat metabolism. And that fuel gauge, if you guys have followed Muscle Ph.D, is called AMPK. So the fuel gauge is called AMPK, and basically that counters insulin's effects on fat metabolism. So there's a net wash. I don't think you need to worry too much about the insulin spike with whey protein.
Boom, boom.
Okay. Okay. All right, M. Mendez, what's going on? What if I go really early to the gym? What do I take protein? I mean, I go whey. Or egg whites, or eggs. Eggs are fine too.
Does your body adapt to protein intake post-workout?
Okay. Here's the thing to understand. Your body adapts to anything. And so one of the concepts that I want to emphasize, like, for example, like if you up your protein a lot, your body will start adapting. It'll build up enzymes that start to break protein down. So it may be, you may periodize protein as well. So maybe like on your most important days, you go higher protein intake, but some days that aren't as important, you just go moderate. So you don't adapt. But yes, you adapt to everything.
Protein before sleep. Really quick.
So protein before sleep, I think again, Van Loon's lab showed that was very important. So I think having a protein source prior to bed, your body can activate protein synthesis to the same extent when you're sleeping as when you're awake. So yes, have protein before bed.
For an endurance athlete, how much protein should they have?
There's evidence, this is actually older studies out of Tarnopolsky's lab in the 80s, and they actually found that endurance athletes might need more protein than even resistance trained athletes. So, again, for endurance athletes, it's going to be the same thing, probably 30, 40 grams a meal, and for your whole day, you're probably talking close to 1 gram per pound of body weight.
All right, we're going to try to rapid fire over here, okay?
Rapid fire.
Answer them quick.
Okay, so you
Boom,
guys are
pin
going to
it.
read them off?
You want me to? What are your thoughts on protein about 20 minutes nearing the end of the training?
I think that's a great idea.
Let's see. Nope.
Someone goes cottage cheese, a good thing before bedtime. I mean, yeah, that's fine.
Doing IF, if you don't eat protein all day, but your meals have higher protein, will you lose muscle?
If it's an 8 to 9 hour feeding period, no. If you're limiting yourself to 3 to 4 hours, I think eventually you'll start to lose some muscle.
BCAAs instead of whey, pre or post workout.
If you haven't had a meal, whey. If you had a meal within an hour, BCAAs is fine.
What food has the highest content of leucine?
Whey protein. Anything dairy.
Is 1.1 grams per pound of protein optimal for trying to lean out?
No, probably not. No. If you're eating carbs, I say you go higher than that.
Protein and creatine, good idea.
Yes.
Casein before bed, we already answered that.
Whey protein pre and post workout better than a meal pre-workout and whey post. No, I think either works, Corey.
Will the window be shorter if doing full body workouts with fewer sets per muscle group?
Yeah, it will be shorter because you're not getting as high a stimulus on those muscles.
Have you tested overdose of protein for a longer time?
There is a Tipton tested that and basically found that once you lowered your protein back to normal, that you actually lost muscle. So that's why, as I said, if you're going to up your protein, do it for a few days and then go back to normal.
Is whey your only recommended protein? Is pea protein advised?
No. And yes. No, yes, yes, whey is a good protein. No, pea protein is not.
What about BCAAs alongside protein powder?
If it's pea protein, yes. If you're having whey and it's a high enough dose, no.
Michelle. Hey, Michelle. Creatine better pre, intra, or post workout?
Dr. Antonio's research showed post workout. This is fun.
240-pound bodybuilder. How many carbs should you consume if they're trying to lean out?
Well, I mean, it could range from 30 grams a day to, if you're trying to lean out, maybe keep the ratio to where like you're evening out your protein with your carbs. So like no more than 1.5 grams of carbs for every gram of protein. I wouldn't exceed that.
We got a funny one from Pop-Tart Coach. I'm assuming he's a macro fitter.
What's up, Pop-Tart Coach?
So if adding BCAAs at the same time eating a complete cookie, is that a good idea?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna have a cookie, why not throw some BCAAs in with it? Yeah, good
especially with a protein cookie.
Yeah, especially if it's a protein cookie.
Whey protein isolate or just standard whey protein post workout?
Post workout, I go with isolate, particularly hydrolyzed if you want to lose fat.
Next question, is hydrolyzed worth the money?
Oh, good question.
If you want to lose fat and lean out, I think it is.
Which everyone's trying to do.
Yeah.
You talked about protein levels going up and down, so your body doesn't accommodate. Can you explain in detail?
Yeah, so basically, Tipton found that after a few weeks of having high protein, so for example, say I had 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight for several weeks, and then I went down to 1 gram, there's some evidence that I might start to lose muscle because my body adapts to the higher amounts of protein intake. But your body kind of adapts to a diet. It really takes 1 to 2 weeks to really start adapting to a diet. So my point is don't let it adapt. So maybe what you do is on your most important days, have those higher protein intakes and don't allow your body to adapt. And after a few weeks of doing that, just go down to moderate protein, like 1 gram per pound of body weight, make that the norm for 1 or 2 weeks, and then start cycling again for your 3 or 4 days a week, your most important days, go higher protein.
Really quick, what kind of doctor or what is your doctorate in?
My doctorate's in skeletal muscle physiology, and see back there, PhD. So it's a research intensive doctorate. So it's a PhD.
Is it possible to make gains when you're in a calorie deficit?
Yes.
Gotcha.
All right, perfect. Are fast digestive carbs necessary after a workout?
No. Depends on what your goals are, but no. Not if you're talking about muscle growth.
Andy Finisher. Last question.
Last question.
Best strategy to protect muscle while cutting.
Boom.
Yeah,
While cutting down, one strategy to have very high protein intake. So Dr. Antonio's lab basically found that he had like 1.5 to 2 actually he had like
the 2.2 to 3.2.
Is it grams per kilogram or
grams per kilogram?
Okay, so basically, if you're having like 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, that might be one way. I think another way is to calorie cycle. That could protect your muscle if you're constantly in a calorie deficit. And I think higher training frequency, and I think HMB is definitely going to help spare your muscle.
I love you.